This is London Electricity, and you are lucky enough to be listening to the Liverpool Connection podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Liverpool Connection podcast. This is my music and football episode where I usually bring on somebody, a musician, producer, to talk about football and music. But today is mostly about music. My next guest is was a DJ and producer. You could find a lot of his tracks and remixes on labels like Bedrock, Curfew, NRK, Defected, and you could never pigeonhole him, which was really good. And he used to go by the name King Unique. It's Matt Thomas. So welcome to the podcast, Matt.
Hello, Daz. Thanks for having me, mate. I've got to go in with my first caveat, which is, of course, King Unique. Originally, as you know, was the two of us, the two Matts.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think, when Matt 1 left, I guess, commercially it makes sense not to go, yeah, it used to be two of us, but you're only getting half now. So he kind of, just as a commercial necessity, didn't get talked about, I guess, in that sort of period as much, because people are trying to, identify that this is now King Unique.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's all over. I don't have any intention of trying to claim that it was just me all along, because it wasn't. King Unique it's always in my mind, a band name.
Mm-hmm.
It became like this ridiculously pompous name attached to one person. Do you mean when you call a band that, it's got a whole different resonance to when you yourself are King Unique? It just sounds like, I can't wait to make this guy. So it was it was an interesting name to inherit as a solo act.
Well, I want to go back, early days, when you're a kid. I always like to ask, what was playing in your house? What kind of made, what were your mum and dad listening to? And were you influenced by their music?
Well, for me, it's an interesting one in that, most people have these very sort of rich tales of I remember Stevie Wonder when I was 4. Music was really low on my sort of parents' kind of world priorities, I think, because they were that little bit older, I think, than most people around my age. Like my parents in mid-30s. They were born, not mid-30s now. Oh my God. No, they were born in the mid-1930s. So when rock and roll kicked off, they were already 25, and being 25 at the end of the 50s was you're grown up. None of this stuff is for you anymore. You're 25, you're now grown, you're married. This is just immaterial. It's like what are the kids doing? And it's literally what other kids do. I'm not one of them. So my dad sort of thinks he may have accidentally seen the Beatles, because he was working in Liverpool and went to the cabin around the appropriate period. But he never, got anything of it. That was being pressed by me. Did you do that? Well, maybe. So we had a Sony stereo in our house that only one speaker worked, and I didn't know what that sort of meant. I just thought, well, one sound isn't working. So we had this one sound doesn't work, mono. And the only records in the house were there was a copy of Paul McCartney 2, so I knew Temporary Secretary, and You Don't Go Jumping Waterfalls. I'd picked up a copy of ABBA Give Me a Mouth to Midnight at a jumble sale, 7-inch. And the weird thing is, and there was a TV themes collection which had the theme from Carl Sagan's Cosmos, which is actually Vangelis' Heaven and Hell. And that's the weird thing, is looking back years later, every single tune I was really obsessed with from this, they had lots of classical, and my dad had lots of kind of early jazz stuff that you didn't really listen to. So from this very sort of sparse collection of records I could listen to, I realized later on they all have really distinctive synthesizers. And the bit that got me in Give Me a Mouth to Midnight, Always Take a Chance on Me, I should tell you that. Always Take a Chance on Me. It's magic. And a little arpeggiation goes, and it's literally 3 beats, 3 notes in a bar. And I just thought that was the fucking best bit of that record. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what. I'd say, I couldn't have told you a drum thing, a synth at that point. It was just, I was 7. But yeah, the kind of lovely, beautiful synths in Waterfalls, the mad on Temporary Secretary, the whole Vangelis thing of in Heaven and Hell, which is a very epic mid-70s Vangelis. There was something about the tonality of synthesizers and whatever else may have changed with my relationship with music over the years. I still utterly and completely fucking love synthesizers and would be buried in them. And that's where I got on. And if I ever get off, it would be the last thing I get off from is synths.
Mm-hmm. Are you kind of like an Aphex Twin kind of, where you would get a synthesizer and you would actually like reconfigure it? Were you that kind of person? Because I know how, I've seen documentaries on how he would just rip a synth apart and then put it back together the way he thought it should sound.
I'd love to take the compliment. But what I would tend to do, the nearest I come to Aphex Twinisms, is the whole time we were doing King Unique, and probably quite often to Matthew's intense frustration, I never liked just like sort of getting a good playable sound on a synthesizer and then playing it with the black and white notes. I just like set up some incredibly complicated process where it would only play like 2 notes, but then they'd go through like 9 other pieces of kit, and by like weirding and stranging those pieces of kit, a whole piece of music would evolve. Like, the biggest example of that is 2 Million Suns. Is when I was, I had the freedom to do that kind of insanity on my own for weeks. And there's not one sound on that record that's made. I don't think I played one sound, but they were all like just sculpted in incredibly complicated ways that you just couldn't play. And then I'd listen to like all this stuff I'd created and arrange it and back into music. And so there's something about not knowing what I'm playing that lets me hear it like everybody else does. Whereas if I know what I'm playing, I'm going, it's fucking A minor, it's a D minor, it's nothing. Whereas like, if I don't know that, I'll just hear that's fucking really satisfying. I'll find out later, I go, that's just the most corny chord change in history. That's fine. If I don't know what I'm doing it, I can enjoy it like you do and like whoever else is going to hear it. I was just like, well, that's just the right thing to happen. I don't try and double guess it. So that would be the purpose behind all this like subterfuge, is so that I could be a listener and a writer at the same time. So.
Mm-hmm. What came first for you? Was the DJing or actually making music?
Well, this is where King League worked very well for the two of us. There was a complete split, like down the center of the screen. Matt was a DJ, so he would be the ideal person for this podcast because he's got sort of like an extra 10 years in dance music before me. I was very much into indie music. I kind of came into dance music through that kind of crossover, the kind of weatherwall left field, or where it kind of just had that sort of foot in each can. Whereas he's absolutely, Hacienda at 16, original resident of Cream, da. He is the person who would have that side of this story. If you can tempt him out of assignment in Australia, he might tell you that. So we had this beautiful split where, and I think without outing either one of us, we both tend towards slightly neuro sort of diverse personalities, and he is quite an ADHD-ish kind of person, and I'm quite an autistic kind of person. I don't mean like either one of us needs put under that banner, but just like in terms of the way people lean. And so I kind of lean into being somebody who's got a favorite sound, like that's good, but no, it's not good. That's not good, but that's right. So I can be obsessed about that's the right sound. That's the right sound. He can rely on me utterly to go, that's the right sound. No. That sound is also like it references all this weird 80s punk, and we can like bring that in. And then he had the kind of like, there is this fucking amazing record on promo, and it's like there's 10 copies, and it's the fucking record. That's the end of the discussion. It's fucking brilliant. We've got to get that fucking record and like get that, because we won't be on release for 6 months. We need to get it and be understanding what's happening there, and be making records that reflect this change that's just happened. And then we will be able to kind of like sort of access this great scene that's going to come through in 6 months off the back of this change or that change. And then by the time that 6 months arrived, he was like, that thing's fucking dead. I don't give a fuck. Where's the next interesting thing? So he had a very sort of shiny chase, and in a very, let me be clear, a very sort of focused way. And I'll be sort of going, well, okay, we've shiny chased it down. Now let's work out why the fuck every last part of the sound choices work. And like why they might sort of like actually sing, like resonate for like me personally, not just like that's the right noise, slavishly copy, but sort of find a way to go, okay, I like what they're doing, and I can bring something to that frame. And so the two of us could split very neatly that way. He was quite networky, and so he would like just get off and like be kind of making sure that we were somebody who'd get one of those 10 promos. And I would be spending a whole day making sure that the drop in Dirty just fucking exploded. It just had to fucking explode. You know, and that was, we would kind of work together on the arrangement, but then once we kind of got the blocked out, he'd like work much more on the sort of percussive rhythmic sort of way it worked and built and dropped. And I'd work on the tonal side and the mixing. And so it was just, we had a very good sort of small Venn diagram overlap of like really key skills. We very rarely sort of like stepped on each other's toes. So yeah. So to answer the question, no, I wasn't a DJ first.
So when you write songs, because you know you hear people like Goldie talk about like you know he has so much in his head, but he doesn't do the actual stuff. You know, he has a engineer producer to basically understand what's in his head. Now, for you and Matthew, was it 50-50, or would you, you know, on different projects, would you be like, okay, you seem to know what you're doing, let's go with that, or would you just go, okay, everything's 50-50?
It's kind of hard to say. I think like because he'd been doing it for like however many years beforehand, like I'd met him when he was never fully that kind of Goldie image of like somebody who literally just walks in and goes, that, do that. You know, that's not, he was always very hands-on in the sort of sequencing and the setting up of like parts and so on. But I don't think he ever considered himself a musician. Like at one point when we got signed to Parlophone to do an album, we had a lot of problems then. And I think that sort of lack of being able to like just realize a musical idea became the one time it was frustrating, I think, was then. I think he was really pissed off that he couldn't start a track off or like, you know, sort of nail an idea down without having to wrangle with me when we weren't really quite on the same page. But that was the exception. I think most of the time we sort of knew that I'd probably write musical parts. But I've never sort of felt like a hierarchy of like, I've done the musical, you've done his drums. It's like, this is fucking dance music. I don't want to be funny. But if you think the drums aren't like fucking carrying 50% of this track, then you're not paying attention. And certainly when we sort of, you know, stop working together, when somebody who has this access to like sort of an innate ability to just translate rhythms in their head perfectly into, you know, the computer, and you kind of go, oh, you know, and I've learned a lot from working together for, you know, that point 10 years. But, you know, he at that point still couldn't have sat down and like nailed the synth he wanted. And I conversely had a lot of like, you know, thinking to do to kind of nail beats that worked anywhere near the sort of quality he brought. So I kind of never felt there was like a thing of like, well, I wrote the tune. Fuck off. This is not how it works. You know, I mean, to be clear, we also did a lot of remixes, like about 90% of our output intentionally was remixing. So you're starting with a third party in the room. You know, there's this third party in the room who don't get to argue back when you say, that was shit. That was fucking brilliant. So we very rarely had a blank canvas. It was like the pair of us would, you know, kind of pick through the parts. Occasionally some disagreements there, but typically we'd just kind of go, well, that's good, that's not. You know, one anecdote, you know, the one time that we were both absolutely couldn't work out if something was good or not was we got sent The Killers. And they weren't The Killers, they were just some band, just some weird American band. And we're like, when you've seen The Killers on telly and you know what The Killers means, that's fine. But when you're sat in our studio and you get sent plenty of things, you're like, no, it's just record company brand. No. So something comes through and it's like, is this knowing? Like, do they know they're sort of being a little bit kind of 80s camp, but with these really horrible 90s rave synthy? Like, do they know, or are they just clueless Americans? And we were really like backwards and forwards going, I think it might be good. Really shit. And you don't want to work on something that when the act comes out, you're like, oh God, no, this is some really, really cringeworthy thing. And so we couldn't tell. And the Killers is the one thing where we were just like, I don't know, put this band in my mind. But in the end, we decided they were cool, and they were, as it turns out. But that was an example of I think people kind of forget that by the time a record appears with our remix on it, there's already been so much press, so much promo, particularly with a major label thing, that you kind of go, oh yeah, King and Eat mixed the Killers, well done. It's like, yeah, it didn't feel like the Killers when it was offered to us. It just felt like, here is a sum of money, here is a potentially crap band. Sometimes you do mix one and go, oh yeah, that wasn't so good. So yeah, but no, they were cool. We did the remix, and we actually got the one band we ever got direct feedback from. We actually got a thing coming back saying, look, you've done this really cool clubby thing, but can you put the bring it back down tonight? Can you put that back in just once, just once? And so song wasn't that track, but okay. So we found a way to make it. And it did good, the way we got it in the end didn't sort of sabotage the track. Yeah, so good luck to them. I hope they do really well.
Well, it seems with a lot of producers, when they do the remixes, a lot of these artists, you don't get the feedback that you kind of need, and then it's just basically thrown in the bin. All your hard work, and unless you put it out on white label and it gets played by DJs, but I'm sure you are offered so many remixes that you've got to say no to.
All times the same remix on occasion. We got offered "I Like the Way You Move" about fucking 4 times. You're like, just fucking no, no. 2 or 3 times initially, and the money kept going up and up, and we're just like, there's no way of doing this that stops it being "I Like the Way You Move."
Yeah.
So we're like, no. And so finally they were like, oh God, this guy absolutely is here like a dream. Like, you're going to mix this. It's going to be huge. It's saying, oh God. And it was like, no, we're not. And then a year later, it got re-released by somebody else. And they were like, need to remix this. King and Eat were like, fucking hell, not again. We've done this. No, absolutely not.
I don't think no amount of money could make, well, I mean, for maybe some other people, but if you've kind of generally, care about music, no amount of money should make you want to remix that pile of dog poo.
Yeah, I don't even know who wrote it. I hope I'm not offending somebody who actually, it's a moment of genuine kind of connected expression, because it may well be for that guy. It just doesn't land for me. That's, I guess, the thing about King and Eek that I suppose kind of shows, I don't know, you hate to sort of sit around bigging yourself up about, we were remixers, we were literally producers for hire. So I'm not going to start sitting there saying, oh no, we're very, very massively, integrity was all that we cared about. No, we wanted to make a living and do great dance music. But I think the thing which kind of reassures me when I occasionally wake up and go, well, you just literally just spooning it for money, is that both Matthew and I, when we finished, we've both just gone, done, absolutely done. And I kind of feel like it's quite easy to stay doing this for reasons that aren't to do with actually necessarily really loving it or really making anything significant anymore. It's just, this is a thing that I have. I can continue to sort of open this tap. It will carry on pouring out something. And I think both of us were just like, no, we've done a thing that we cared about. And if I'm no longer sort of truly caring about it, then it's done. So that's the thing which I guess I sort of think is the only sort of proof in the pudding I can offer against a resume that's full of remixes done for money.
Well, where did the name King Unique come from?
Well, it was Matthew's brother Leon. Matthew originally was working with, as I say, he kind of did the guy bringing a group of people together to make records when he was making the Matthew Roberts records in the 90s, and that's how I met him. And at that time, his sort of regular collaborator was his brother Leon. And so we hadn't really sort of been through the big shake-up of personnel that led to just me and Matthew becoming King and Eek on our own about a year or two later. And so at this point, like just one of the kind of combinations of people that periodically were in the studio together, myself, Matthew, Leon, and a friend of ours called Stephen Cosgrove, we were all in the studio together and made this track called Change. And it wasn't like, this is the start of a massive project. It's just like, we're just making a track. We're just all in the studio, we're making a track. Did it. Matthew was managed by Defected at the time, by Simon Dunmore. And so it kind of went to them without a lot of kind of like discussion, really, because it just seemed like it suited them. It's a disco cut up. Just a sidestep. I fucking hate that tune so much. It's so much. And because Defected will never let any track die, it's like, it's always top of Google, top of Spotify, because it will just get, if I ever get anywhere near recouing the royalties, they'll just commission another remix and it'll go $4,000 in the red again, and it will just get re-released forever. So it's a zombie track that I wish would die. We were trying to channel Thomas Bangal to cut up sort of really ghetto housey stuff, and that's kind of what we did on the very first pressing of it, which we released on Matt's label. And then it went to Defected, and it was like, can you just make it more deepish, and can you just make it more this-ish? We were working on it for nearly like a year and a half. It was like, how many versions of that tune were there? So in the process of this remaking, and Defected going, it's going to be huge. It'd be like, and Defected, to be fair, at the time, the reason we took the debate was they were like regularly dropping things in the top 20, not like dance, but top 2020. So I'm not going to be too cool for school and say, no, we weren't doing that. Yeah, we were. We were. So we were trying to land that, but it turns out we didn't really have that sort of like knee-deep instinct for that particular thing. We liked this rougher, wonkier thing, which is what King Leap lived on. And it just wasn't going to make a top 20. King Leap never, we had a couple of like accidental top 20s of stuff, but we never went for like the hit. And so when somebody's like, do the hit, we were kind of like, just like, I wish I could, but just as I go to do it, I had this like contrary urge to use my elbow. And it's like, no, just do the hit. Okay, no, use this. So we just did round and round and round. So one day during this endless months of redoing, Simon rings up and goes, it's being fucking pressed, okay? Fuck it. The last version you gave, it's fucking done. It's being pressed. You need a name. And I need to know it by the end of the week. It is being pressed. I need labels. And so we're like, oh, okay, yeah. And the week comes. What's the name? Oh, shit, we haven't thought about it. Okay. Fucking Monday. Monday comes around. We're like, Simon, name, literally, guy pressing plant, now, name. And so we were like, 5 minutes, shit. And we're just like, who's got a name? And so Matt's brother Leon was like, I saw this film and I was going to use the name myself. It was about these Brazilian sort of street gang, like kids, like the boss, they were all called King something. The boss was called King Unique, and that kind of cool. We were like, cool, done. Hello, King Unique. And that was it. And so because of that, like, on kind of bullet to the head conversation, I've checked into hotels where literally the staff have like run friends to come and see what wanker is checking in under King Unique. I was in Newcastle one time. Remember Matt and I being checked into Colville as Mr. King and Mr. Unique. And the hotel staff in Britain just loved it because it was like, we're not checking in King Unique without some bullshit going down. So, yeah.
I love that story. That's great. Well, I mean, King Unique, you could have picked some worse ones. So, that's actually not too bad.
We were nearly the Droids. That was a discussion at one point. And then somebody misheard that, and we were nearly the Droids. A sort of weird combination of droids and droids. And Matthew was always obsessed with his never-released Welsh techno alias, which was going to be Hugh, spelled the Welsh way, H-U-W. Hugh Jas. Is J-A-S. Hugh Jas. But we never released the Hugh Jas opus sadly.
So when you're in your studio, what was your studio like? Is it more digital, or did you have hardware in there? Because obviously in today's Ableton, Logic, you can just use a laptop and make tracks. For you and Matthew, was it a bit of both?
Yeah, we began working together in '97. That was before the advent of like VSTs. I think it was just literally '97 was the year that Logic Audio came out. I think Cubase Audio before it became Cubase VST was around that time. So basically, it was up to that point you had to get a tape machine, or you had to buy enough samplers that the whole track was in the samplers. So I met Matthew. That's what they were doing. They had like 4 big archives filled with all the memory, and so the whole track, all the vocals, all the pieces from that remix they were doing would be in the samplers, and then Cubase was still just an Atari Cubase, and it just sequenced the samplers via MIDI into a Mackie desk, and it just went down to DAT. I think they had like a DA88, which was those 8-track digital tape machines. So yeah, so we were pre what we call a DAW. We were just MIDI sequence guitars. But by the time he and I were working together, it was 2-3 years later, and by that point we'd all kind of got our first Macs. They were like running like 4 channels of audio or something crazy. And what really the King Unique thing is like in wars, there's like some technologies win wars, or certainly influence wars. It's kind of sometimes music is a bit like that. Like you get something just ahead of everybody else, and you can either get like a gimmick out of it, or you can get like a proper platform out of it. And this is very nerdy, so I apologize for anybody who doesn't need this level of nerd. But when we use DAWs today, every sort of single thing in the whole studio in your laptop, every last virtual knob, virtual kind of fader, every last tweak of every synth, they can all be sort of set up to move in what we call automating. I'm sure it's explaining for the one person who's still here who doesn't know about this. So you draw these lines, and these lines kind of move, so sounds sculpt and change over time, and you haven't got to like stand there and go in real time. You just kind of draw it. And so this is how it really works on this. That hadn't been invented. It wasn't in the DAWs. They could record audio, they could put effects on, but the effects just sat there, and whatever level the fade was at just sat there. It didn't take long until automation came along, but it was about a year and a half it wasn't there. And there was one plugin called Opcode Fusion Filter, and they'd sort of somehow built automation into this plugin. And it meant that for the first time you could really like nail, like you could play a bit over and over and over again. It was going, let's change the curve, just change the curve, just make it a bit more distorted as it sweeps down. And that was kind of our secret weapon. Is I think it was the end of that kind of dubby San Fran prog sound. Well, tribal really, kind of a bit of prog, which was quite sort of loose and splashy and vibey. And suddenly we kind of switched across to the sort of more definitively prog, but kept that dark thing. And we could execute stuff with this kind of precision that really wasn't as easily attained. You could do it like, an SSL desk and like 30 grand. But to do it in a bedroom was a lot of trouble still. And you could kind of get around with samplers, but there was just something about it all being in the computer and having like these curves where you could like just, and that really meant that we just executed it for about a year and a half. I think tracks that sounded just something a little more about them in terms of how they kind of just landed at the key moments. So yeah, we were just at the moment that stuff happened, and I think by jumping on an obscure detail almost, it kind of partly sculpted our early sound.
Yeah, it's just crazy to think, I keep saying, that I think that's why the market's saturated with music, because, everybody and their granddad can make music on a computer now, and they can put it out on Beatport, Bandcamp. So, you thousands upon thousands of records each day are put out. Are they good? A lot of them no, because they don't know what they're really doing. Like, the bass isn't what it's supposed to sound like, or, it's just because they're not engineers. Musically they might have it, but you really need an engineer who knows what they're doing to get that crisp sound that you're looking for. You and Matthew have remixed so many. I mean, I took a look yesterday, and I just, the amount of remixes you two have done is just insane.
Is it?
But there's a couple that definitely jump out. Obviously, remixing Underworld, 2 months off.
Yeah.
Was that daunting for you? Because obviously Underworld are a massive, massive band. They were back in the 90s. They're still massive now. So when that comes through your letterbox, were you finally going, that this is Underworld? Like, do you look at each other and just be like, we've made it kind of thing? I know it sounds a bit like weird.
No. It's there's bits of that. I'm trying to think why it didn't we were certainly like, yeah, fucking brilliant. I guess like from the outside, as you say, it just looks like Underworld, they're huge. We do a remix. It's like it's a kind of like, sort of like, there you go. That means you've reached this level, you are doing this kind of work now. I guess what happened in the background that made it sort of seem less kind of like sudden, like, oh, what do you think of this? Bam, okay. Was, and this is like a weird story that I occasionally sort of think, are you just bullshitting yourself? I remember it all happening, but I'm happy to somebody bring me and go, no, you've got the wrong end of the stick there. But this is what basically happened is, as we sort of broke as King Unique, I was making these tracks as Mainframe at the same time, and which were kind of very definitively proggy and just my own stuff. But again, Matt would always lean in and go, that's a bit of that, just land that bit harder. But these were my tracks. And also there was that Watkins Black AM record on originally Shaboom, and then went to Sony. So suddenly, just as King Unique kind of like suddenly got all over the radio, like we've been kind of pushing for a year and a half and not much had happened. And then there was like a Friday where Tom played 5 in one show, and it was just like, that was it. From that point, we were going to be busy, just busy and in demand in clubs and remixing. But just as that landed, just a little earlier, the Black AM thing had been a whole, frankly, just a shit show. It was signed to a tiny label. We then kind of used it to kind of present like a whole label deal to Sony, where Shaboom was kind of, not just that, to be clear, Shaboom had their own massive sort of album artist act going on as Shaboom. And they also had this kind of thing of like, and there's this guy who's made this tune like on this weird album, like weird sort of squelchy stuff that what's his name, Craig Richards used to play at like Fabric in the early years. Watkins stuff is mainly really weird sort of, again, bang out to music, like and like ugly stuff. She used to kind of drop as like very cool underground early doors. But I accidentally made this bed that then sort of like a friend went, oh, we could put a vocal on that, and Natalie, through this guy, she sang on it. But then the whole thing was turning completely sour. The guy that connected us up, the label, Shaboom, everybody just began fighting like fucking rats in a sack, because suddenly there was loads of money attached to this one record. And Sony were trying to maneuver me out the way and just kind of take her on as a vocalist. And that was my fucking song, I'm afraid. So we had things like going to see Sony and literally being left in the atrium for like 20 minutes after the meeting started, and then going up with my manager to discover the meeting's already started, already working out who's going to choreograph the top of the pop stuff with the singer. And it's just like, people were like firing managers, taking on managers, changing size. It was just like, the fuck is this? This is my introduction to making it. So in the midst of all this, our management were Junior Records, the sort of follow-on to Junior Boyzone. So we had Steve Hall, who is Underworld's manager, runs Junior. And our manager was Paul Burnham, who used to work with Steve, and the two of them ran that era of Junior, that sort of Express to Us, Future Shock, that kind of era. But they were the same people that had been involved in the chemical signing. And, as I say, Steve directly is Underworld manager. So we had like a sort of a connection, it's like a business connection. We didn't like hang out or anything. And so during this phase, I think our manager had this weird idea that like I was this coming talent and I could do much better than Matthew, which was just like, you just don't, you have these strange ideas. So he basically got in touch one day and he said, and this is how it was put to me, and I recognize in retrospect it wasn't quite how it sounds. One day he goes, you're going to get a call from Steve. Like, Steve's going to ring you. And I was like, okay, cool. It's just, just take this course, see what you think. And Steve rings and goes, hi, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Darren's left Underworld. They're working on the album starting pretty soon. Do you want to join Underworld? And I was like, sorry? Because, they're going to need somebody like, somebody like you who's like a really like, got their finger on the dance music scene. And I was thinking like, no, you want Matthew. I'm not going to say anything. Matthew is the Darren character. I'm Rick in Underworld. You can have two Ricks in a car. What the fuck that's going to do? But I'm there going, oh, okay, yeah, well, and at the same time, I'm kind of like, recognizing I'm having this kind of this interest from the Black AM thing. The mainframe stuff's getting very well received. Matthew and I have just seemed to be maybe breaking, but who knows? And suddenly the phone goes and it's like, oh, here's today's ridiculous fucking offer, to the person who was like on the fucking dole in Liverpool like 3 years earlier and had been for like most of the mid-90s. Do you want to join Underworld? Now, in retrospect, of course, the guys who were in Underworld but aren't in Underworld, who sort of tour with them and, contribute, it would have been that role. It wasn't, do you want to be Darren, actually, as it turned out. In the same way that we remixed 2 months off, but then every other lead single on the next albums was actually a collaboration with whoever and whoever and whoever. So they obviously got this new way of working as Underworld, which is like, we'll get the lead single, we'll collaborate with whoever, which is basically where we did a remix, looking back, should have got the comment. So they obviously got this new way of Underworld, which is it's Rick and it's Carl, guys who lean in and are crew, core crew, but they're not the front. And then for the dance bit, instead of missing Darren and Klein forever, just get the flavor of the month in that year to do the lead single. So yeah, it was kind of more like that, but that's not how it put to me. And maybe it wasn't meant that way at the time. Maybe they hadn't evolved that idea. So in the wake of all that, to come to your question, to sort of go, do you want to remix Underworld? It's like, well, this is quite a come down compared to do you want to join Underworld? So I'd kind of like kept my lid on that with Matthew. I did tell him a couple of years later. I said, look, that we had some, God, this conversation sounds like he and I fell all the time. We got on incredibly well for like almost all the time. But of course, interesting stories are when it's not going smoothly and you're just getting chips at lunchtime. We sort of had a bit of a fallout in the wake of this album that didn't work. And, we sort of had like a really good meeting in the park near our house and talked about why we were doing this. It wasn't just a money thing, that we were actually doing it because we give a fuck, and if we don't care, let's not bother, let's just wrap it the fuck up. This would have been 2004, I think. And I mentioned, I was like, look, I'm not doing this to like, undermine you, but it's like, I said no to a lot of like sort of interesting sounding stuff. Not a lot of it. I said no to a couple of interesting sounding things that were waved at me, like the Watkins thing was so much, you're going to be the next everything but the girl, you're going to be this, you're going to be that, you're going to be the other. Now you're going to join Underworld in the spare time. And it's like, no, I'm not chasing those things. I want to do this thing because I have a lot of fucking faith in what you and I do. So, I'm not breaking the news to him here, but I don't think I've talked about it publicly before because it just sounds like such a fucking stupid story. It's just like, I'm going to join Underworld and I didn't. So there you go. So we really enjoyed doing it. It's a fucking amazing record to work on. There's a version that's never been released that's even better than the one that's released. It's about 11 minutes long. I think we gave a copy to Hanan. I think he's got it. Maybe take it to them. Which is fucking just an amazing, stupid festival version. And yeah, it's a lovely record, and I love the fact that people associate us with such a positive thing. But the real kind of topper for me personally is dance music has no currency for my kids, and I don't think it has a lot of currency for a lot of their generation. And I've got all kinds of thoughts on that, but it doesn't, and that's that. And so they're interested for my sake in that I did this. But I don't ram it down their throats. I've never ever tried to encourage them into this kind of scene or music at all. But they like it occasionally. I surprise them and go, "Oh, you remix the Killers? What the fuck are you talking about? Fuck off! You did not remix the Killers." And the one that really impressed them the most was, and it shows you how much culture has changed, which is a key thing. To them, the coolest thing that King League ever did was we're on a fucking early version of the FIFA game. We're on like FIFA 2004 with like the Underworld remix. And like to them, that's like, you're on a FIFA game? Oh my God, because that's got such cultural like fucking wallop today. It's kind of like saying, oh yes, I used to tour with the Beatles. it's just huge in their world because
they connect easier with gaming. They really,
wouldn't they? It's fucking brilliant. Have you gamed?
No. I mean, I tried, and I was really shit at it. So I used to play. I used to go to the arcades and play Pac-Land all the time, or Dragon's Lair.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I used to do all that, but when it comes to like gaming now, I'm just like, it's my head's doing like the 360. I'm just going, what? Wait, what? How? Why? What? Yeah, I'm just not into it. Just never have been since about 17 years of age. I've just like, yeah. I mean, I like my football. I like my music.
Maybe this is the football gaming divide. This is it. And so FIFA was my one chance to forge a link there. I've got my football stories. You want to do football stories? I've got some anecdotes on football. We can steer this as you will, but remember they're in your pocket if you need them.
No, I mean, this is how the music business has gone. Like that is pretty crappy to be in a band with your good mate, and then have a phone call saying, "Hey, leave him, and be in this band." But that's how the music business seems. You have like boy bands or girl singers or whatever. As a band, then they'll get that phone call going, "You'd be much better off and make more money if you did it by yourself." And it's just the way it is. It's very seedy. Thank God I haven't been in like I've DJ'd raves and clubs and stuff. I've not put my own music out, but I've heard just so many bad stories of how the music industry just takes you in and just spits you right back out because you're not the flavor of the month anymore. For you, obviously, you and Matt parted ways in 2006.
Yeah, there's a kind of an overlap. Basically, we stopped making records mainly in 2006, and then we kept playing the gigs until 2008. It was kind of like a sort of an exit strategy for him to basically go to university and learn to be a graphic sort of motion animation designer, which is what he still does today. So I was like, look, if you want to call it a day, why don't we do this thing where like you just fucking turn up on the weekends, I will be making all the remixes, and so you're free all week. It's still come out as King you Need. At the end of this 2 years, I kind of carry the studio, and I kind of buy you out the name, but you've got an income the whole time you're in university. So we kind of both thought, yeah, that fucking works. So that's how, that's why there's a fudge over whether it was 2006, 2008 is 99% of the studio output from 2006 is me, but the DJing was still the pair of us till some point, mid-late 2008.
Now, did you think to yourself, like, it's just dead and buried? Should I just, bury it? Or when was the point where you're like, I'll keep this going for,
There was definitely a point there where I could have like rebranded, and I sort of don't know whether I did the right thing or the wrong thing because I don't have alternative timelines to run down, unfortunately. I can see the good that sort of came with staying as King Unique in terms of like goodwill, promoters willing to just go, cool, we're back here next year. It was as simple as like, I could book a tour in Australia. No, I can say it was the right choice. Basically, we had this conversation early summer, I think, in 2006. And Matt was like, I'll do another year, then I'll start doing this in September. So I was like, no, fuck it. Go now. Just fucking start in 2 months. Tell me ready. Get stuck in. If you want to, obviously not have to run his life on. I just suggested that's a possibility. If you want to start now, we'll do this overlap thing. You've got money. But if you're doing that, I'm fucking taking 3 months off because we've done this kind of very intensively from about 97 and every single day, 5 days a week, plus whichever weekends we've gigged since 2000 in the same room. So I'm going to go off to Australia and just, I called up the motor and said, if I can answer Oz, and I just like, and it was just as that kind of electro house exploded down there in like a scale that you wouldn't believe. It was the thing that everybody was doing. It wasn't like, the dance kids were into it. It was like, no, everybody in Australia just went for this thing. So I was like, if I can answer, I was like, how many weeks could you keep me busy for? And he'd go like, 3, 4. And he's like, indefinitely, because by the time you've done like a 2 or 3 month circuit, I can put you back in again. So I was like, oh, okay. So then I just split the globe in half. I was like, right, I'm going to go down to fucking Australia with my wife at the time, my little baby son, and we're just going to take the southern hemisphere. And I'll go live in Oz and like nip in and out and go to China and Singapore and so on, and mainly be based in Oz. And he took the northern hemisphere, and so we both just split off at that point. You know, I've had, you know, various lovely things happen in life through music. That was one of them. It was just a superb experience, just absolutely fucking beautiful. You know, I've been working, as I say, this constant. And we could live, you know, the way, you know, the sort of the dream of being a DJ, which most people don't actually get to do, is I just down tools Sunday midday, you know, and then didn't pick up again until Friday afternoon, and just did like about 3 months, you know, just change city with the gig. So like Melbourne for a fortnight. Okay, now we're going to go to Sydney for a fortnight. Now we're going to go to Cairns for a fortnight, and just move with the gigs. It was fucking amazing. You know, we were a little 18-month-old boy, you know, the first one of us, we were absolutely in love with it. And the whole thing was absolutely fucking magical. So yeah, if I'd gone, no, I'm going to be Eduardo Gonzalez is my new name, and I'd make, well, that promoter would have gone, I'll get you 2 weekends. So no, fuck that. Yeah, I'm happy enough with the choice. It took some baggage forward. It certainly created like angst for me, because I felt like I had to have an invisible Matthew doing, like I had to kind of like go, okay, my hat off. Now I'm being Matthew. Now I've got to do the beats. And so that meant there was like 3 or 4 really very dodgy remixes just around that point. Paolo Mojo is a sort of one of the few people I still kind of see socially outside of, you know, dance music these days. And he's never forgiven me, because, you know, he'd been waiting around for a King League remix, and I gave him this absolutely unworkable load of crap. So sorry, Paolo, and I did a version of that Destination Unknown Library record. It was suck. Yeah, just a few things of getting my new routine going. And I soon realized, no, I can't do what we were doing. I'm going to have to do something which just comes out of here. So that's why King Lee got a bit more techno-y, a bit more proggy. Not that Matthew wasn't into those things, but he had a sort of a funky house side that I was always kind of going, we get some of that in, but I don't like bongos. I fucking hate saxophones. And he equally would sort of stop me getting a bit too. So once he was like, once that break was off, I was like, okay, we can get it, but you know, in my own kind of way. So yeah, there was some uncertainty in the sort of, you can hear it in the tracks about them for about 6 months, but I kind of found what I was going to do, and it kind of picked up again about 2009, 10, you know, took about a year. I begin landing what I think are, you know, quite solid second after King League records. Yeah.
So for you, you know, you've been in this music business, you know, for a long time. When did you kind of know, like, I'm just done?
Too late is why, if I have any mixed feelings about it, I didn't notice until too late, and that's quite a problematic thing for a number of reasons. And as I said to you, we were talking before we sort of, you know, set the cameras rolling. You know, I don't want anybody who should happen to hear this, or like, you know, hear it repeated to them, that I'm saying, oh yeah, because this isn't good for me or didn't work for me in certain ways, that everybody's carried on as a dick. I don't feel that way, but at the same time, it's like a weird thing. Like I'm aware there's like a kind of narrative that goes with the marketing of dance music that requires that there's a certain way of talking about how great it is and how you have to follow your passion and you must do this at all costs. And it's, you know, it's and I don't buy much of it anymore. And so part of that is in the stopping. You know, I discussed this this podcast with a friend a few nights ago, and he was kind of like, maybe just don't do the fucking podcast, because you're just going to sort of, you know, kind of tear apart the basic fundamental premise of the podcast, which is, let's reflect on how nice dance music is. And it is. I mean, I had fucking amazing times, and I can't stress that enough. The whole thing has delivered me a wonderful life, which I will, you know, never, ever have any issue with the fact that I got to travel the world. I got to sort of have this chance to express things I thought were important and emotionally resonant. You know, things like chatting with yourself still, it's nice. You know, I tend to say no. I think it's the first thing I've said yes to in like 3, 4, 5 years. You know, I'll still get asked to do a remix, or do I want to come and do a gig, or do I want to, you know, make a mix, and I'm just going, no, I don't tend to answer, honestly. because it's a little bit like, how do you balance it when something was really good? Like, say you dated somebody and it was really good. There's no fucking question. Right? And then you finish doing that because it's definitely run its course for you. It's just not doing anymore. Do you hang out with your friends, sitting around saying, "Oh God, you've got really fucking good together. You know what she's doing now? It's amazing. You were so good together." I said, I don't want to do that because you can't actually move on from something if you are anything. This isn't like some weighty thing about music. Anything at all, anything, a job, a relationship, a fucking hobby. You have to stop fucking doing it. So the reverse of that is I kind of feel there's a lot of people who don't want to move on because they are in their lane. And that can be a truthful, resonant thing right through them. They found the thing that is their thing. And I don't want to even slightly fucking throw any kind of shade at that, because that is literally how it feels when you have a thing. Synths, me and synthesizers, I'm buying older and older synthesizers. What am I doing? I'm sort of reliving an imaginary version as if I was Vangelis. So I get absolutely the pull of the thing you love that carries you through your life. But dance music's a bit of a funny one. It's fearsomely egotistical in its premise for the people who make and deliver it, right? It's a curious, there's a split down the screen. Again, I keep doing this. But there is a split down the screen. The premise of going out to dance music, which I very rarely did, which is why I feel it's such a strong split. I made and functioned within Clubland as a producer. I kind of did very little clubbing prior. I mean, literally fingers in one hand. So I think when you approach, like, say, Cream as somebody in Liverpool with friends that you see and who are like your fucking friends, and you go out to Cream, if you go and sit on the steps of the bombed out church, even today, and watch a Saturday night, you get this feeling of Liverpool that a visiting DJ will never get unless they go and sit the fuck on the bombed out church steps and watch that night gather, and the kind of energy and the feeling of the people, and that it's their city, that they're excited to be out and away from the job that's only a mile and a half away, or 500 meters down the road. And that's really communal. And that is about kind of choosing to be with your friends and do this thing. And then the other side of it is about put this person up in a box away from everybody else and put the spotlight on them. And everybody turn and face them, and then play other people's music, and it kind of really all be like just kind of, it doesn't matter because it's them playing it. The whole culture of it is absolutely just not about anything communal. DJs don't fucking have a thing at the front saying, "Don't thank me, thank," and the track name running by. They kind of should, but this is not the culture. It's just not that culture. So we've got this very weird split where we come to enjoy it for the communal sharing, the kind of the equality of the whole thing. And then we deliver it in this really weirdly egotistical fashion. And what that created for me, and I guess it depends very much on your personality type. This isn't some universal truth. But I spent all my time going, this can just stop. I didn't switch around and go, "You're fucking made, mate. You're a legend." I never felt that way. I was always like, no. This can stop. Enjoy this plane ride. Enjoy the fact that you're hungover and this fucking got 9 hours so you get back to Gatwick, because somebody else is not on this flight today because you've got this chance. And it will possibly be the last one. And it doesn't matter how much you do all this kind of prepping, you're basically being fed this kind of adulation and praise, unless you either completely cut it off dead as it reaches you, sort of go, no, I'm not taking it from you. Then it becomes a food that you eat. Now, if I say to you, look, you've had loads of dinners, I've had loads of dinners, surely we can take a week off. You tell me how you feel day 6. When it gets to day 7, and I go, I know, but remember that really great meal you had 3 months ago? Come on, think about that. That'll carry you. And so when you reach the point where, whether it's because you've had enough or because the industry's changed or your personal career arc, or all three in my case, when it's not adding up anymore, the loss is so much at once. And I think, I don't know who the hell listens to this, but I hope if anybody is out there like in a career doing this, it might be something of any use to them, that you lose a lot at once. You lose your income. You lose a sort of a kind of a weird parasocial status. And you lose this food. Now, you can lose one of those and you can, be a reasonably sort of average person and ride that wave. You can lose two, and as long as you've got a strong character and like good foundations, you'll fine. But lose all three at once, and it's a rocky road. And I don't want to belabor the point, but at the same time, it's like, people hear people talk about how wonderful it is and what a fucking great experience it all is. So I want to point out that here's a not great experience I had, and this is a social media thing, which I think is a whole load of problem for dance music. But that was the one thing which really sort of rubbed the salt in it, was that social media kind of became, I think for most people, about 2008, part of the industry that actually suddenly was like, oh shit, these people who I never saw except in a club and for like maybe 10 minutes walking in and out, they're suddenly like in the studio with you going, oh, you're coming to Germany next week. I can't wait to see you. You're so fucking brilliant. And you don't really need that. Not really. If you do, there's something wrong with you. And as it turns out, whatever part of me needed to be told I'm fucking brilliant by individual people, it was just didn't really, it turns out in the long run, need to hear that. So that access to like the artist straight to the fan thing, it's not that healthy. As we now know, everybody knows that. I'm talking like nobody else has got fucking social media. Guess what? It's not that healthy. But I guess the experience was kind of heightened because you were already in this kind of weird, like sort of, on a stage with lights on you thing. And so your only experience of social media initially is just, you're fucking brilliant. You're fucking brilliant. When are you coming? I'm going to take you like on a day trip to see the fucking, the sites near my city. Do you want to come? And you're like, shit, fuck, why not? I'm sitting in the fucking hotels. And so I met loads of brilliant people. And again, I'm not going to complain about this. I met brilliant people who did lovely, fucking great things. And, I ran around, old Jerusalem for 40 minutes because we had 40 minutes. And that was it. We'd taken a 2-hour bus. And this guy was like, yeah, of course we'll do that. Took a 2 hour. And he wasn't even with the promoter. He was just like a guy who was like, okay, cool. Fuck it. Let's take the trip. So we crossed, through the border wall because they had to reroute us to the fucking rotor screen. So we actually went through the border wall and you're going to go, oh, this is the bit you don't see, and then came back into Old Jerusalem. I had 40 minutes to see it. And you're running through Old Jerusalem as it's shutting down for the night. And he's like asking these kids, like, where's the bit where Jesus, was laid out? And they're like, obviously not in English, but he translates for me. He goes, yeah, it's quite funny here because the kids are sort of going, yeah, you keep going down and you go left. And then for Jesus, you want to go right at the phone box and keep going down. And it looks like, the Monty Python Holy Grail like city. It's all like the sandstone blocks and the windy passageways. But they're kind of like, yeah, you've got to go left, left at the Stations of the Cross, and you've got to get past down there, and then there's the mount, the entrance to the mount, the Sermon on the Mount is there, but then you want to go a bit further and Jesus is down there. And so like these experiences and like going Mexican pyramids, I could crap on. So it's been amazing. It has been fucking amazing. But this is the problem. You have something fucking amazing and it's taken away from you. It's a very interesting test of character to crash land that successfully. And yeah, I remember kind of realizing one day that like social media creates this impression that there's all this attention around you. And I had this deeply shameful experience of one day realizing like, shit, I hadn't realized that the imaginary millions that used to be out there had just shrunk down to the loudest 1% of people who still gave a fuck about them. And I hadn't noticed it. And it's such a fucking shame experience to go, oh God, this has been like, so much of this has been up here. Oh, fuck. And then to realize, oh yeah, I'm like loads in debt as well, because I've been sure there'd be this next gig or this next remix, but of course remixes now pay a 10th, or now a 20th, because Spotify has just eaten it all. And the labels close, and the interesting people that turned our music into interesting culture, like the guys that ran the labels who got the really good A&R men, like Paula Jr., really creative, interesting people, they got jobs elsewhere. So the whole thing just narrowed down to this succession of like slightly egomaniacal cottage industries with all these people running Kickstarters and putting hand hearts at their fans all the time. But there's only the one guy getting paid when we all, do this project together. And I just found all that really didn't I just felt like, well, surely we can all see how this is working. It's kind of embarrassing. And it's like, and I say other people make this work and it's resonant and true. And so this is me. I just couldn't do the whole, I'm going to gather this mailing circle of people together and go, let's all give me money to make you happy doing the thing I do. I was just like, so I did a few because King never did any merchandise, and that kind of thing. Partly we were lazy, but partly it was almost just fucking naff. I don't mean, again, I've been on Bedrock and clearly I know they make quite a good turnout on merchandise. But this is just me. We're always just like, wherever this started, it was acid house. And I know that doesn't mean a fucking thing in Russia where it was money music, or in South America where it's like almost like a religion. But here, and even if I wasn't in it, I knew what the fuck it was. Going to the hippie raves in the 90s, 1991. It was completely fuck everything, fuck all this bullshit. And for me, that was the only thing that never sort of, and as I say, I took money from remixes, but we never, but we knocked back the shit ones. We never went, oh yeah, money, money, money. What's the biggest figure? Oh yeah, I like the way you move, 20 grand, bring it in, roll it out. And I think I hope the reason people like what we did is because you can hear it.
Well, I think that's, what I love your honesty, and plus, I'm sure some people will listen to this and just go, is he mental? Why would he give up something that, can make you a superstar, can jet set here and there? But if your passion isn't there with any job, then stop. If you get up in the morning, like, and I mean, I had this conversation actually this morning with me mate about doctors, especially in America. It's not about being a doctor anymore, about taking care of people. It's about how much money you can make being a doctor. That is not, when you go to medical school, I would hope you're going, I want to help people. But it's not like that anymore. It's like, how much money can I get from my patients to make me live in a big house, have nice cars? And I'm sure it's the same for you. Once your passion's gone, it's gone. And it has changed. The club culture in the UK is getting smaller and smaller. Yeah, you've got your fabric still, but the smaller clubs are dying because kids want to go to festivals because they want to see 30 DJs all in one place, pay one amount of money and go. And they could give two shits about club culture. It's festival. It's a place where they can go hang out with their mates. The whole influencer stuff on social media puts a bad taste in my mouth. People getting booked for the wrong reasons. They're getting booked because they have so many followers on Instagram and Twitter. It's and I always try and say this. I'm not trying to sound like an old fart because this is their time. It just seems like sometimes the passion is gone. I'm hearing it more now. I listen to, Sven Vath going, there's more people behind me than there is in front of me. There's less dancing going on, more of, people taking pictures and cameras out. So I understand the passion is not where it is for me, where it was, in 1988 when I first heard a guy called Gerald. And I was like, what is this music? I need to hear more of it.
That's a novelty. I remember hearing all that stuff and just being like, what the fuck is this? Because I've listened to synth stuff in the 80s. Like I was, absolutely drowning in that kind of genre and Vangelis and Tangerine Dream. So to me, when I first heard sort of things like Warm Leatherette, I was like, why is it so fucking ugly and simple? Because you can make like fucking Oxygen 10 years ago, but then very soon you're going to go, why is this bothering me? Why has it got its hook in me? And so I knew that although I wasn't like sort of instantly going, right, hacienda, I didn't have that epiphany. But I knew like there's something in this that's like, I think it's an interesting thing in life. You'll often be almost slightly like puzzled or put off by something that's going to mean a lot to you later. And I remember like sort of, hearing some like kind of ugly, like some really early proto-trance, like, I mean, we wouldn't even call it trance really now, like the stuff on Rising High, could probably be more like sort of techno-y trance, but no Christ, what the genre's called now. So I remember like having like stuff like Pete Mamluk and things like that, going out to buy those and going, this is fucking good. It's kind of got something of that jarry stuff I'm into, but I've completely sort of also hearing this like underneath it going, it's fucking good as well. But oh god, you said a lot. There's a lot to get into, and a tiny anecdote to illustrate your point about the passion. And it just sounds like, oh, really? That sounds awful. But I remember actually landing, and whenever I go to somewhere sufficiently exotic and far away, like Asia or India, wherever, you kind of get that hit. Going, fucking hell, I'm here. And I remember landing in Korea about 2012 or 13 and getting ready for the big, you're in somewhere new, never been in before. Whoa. It just didn't happen. I just went, oh, look over there. There's people from Korea over there. Look, we're in Korea. What the fuck where's the, whoa. It didn't come. And that was a moment where I still thought, oh, have I actually like completed? I can carry on doing this. I'm not fucking sad I'm in Korea. I'm fucking thrilled. But the buzz, like the lift, like the kind of wow, just was like, oh, this is an airport. I remember kind of going, you've done this enough that you're just not seeing that sort of like difference in the way you used to. These are just people. You've been around people all over the world enough now that sort of sense that, oh, wow, how exotic, how strange. It's like, well, no, like hundreds of people all over the world, and we're all essentially people. There's cultural differences, but they're minute. So that was a clue. But yeah, there's this thing about, and this is where I think you and I probably, we're not like split on it, but I have like an understanding about dance music that I kind of feel like part of the problem is we haven't got out of the way. And that's kind of the problem, like Teddy Boys or mods, like we didn't get the fuck out of the way. And I think that was, again, a social media thing. I think basically techno and house ate everything that happened. If they assimilated it, like somebody would go, oh, we're going to do this with it. And they'd go, well, then that is a new kind of techno. Oh, we're going to do this with it. Well, then that's what else you can do with house. And it was this wonderfully fucking plastic, sort of malleable thing that could just absorb and like go, okay, yeah, we can bring that. We can do it that way too. And then I think, and this is only a theory, I haven't fucking got the data, but I think we decided that actually we were going to shut the fucking door and say, no, that is not house or techno with EDM. And that's just the same fucking time that we got to see and hear music without being in that club. We got to see little clips on like YouTube or on Facebook and go, what are these wankers listening to? These fucking wankers all listen to this fucking, and we weren't in the moment when we first encountered it. We encountered it secondhand through this bullshit medium that connects people, but also, as we now know, has this capacity to fucking separate them. And so I think we saw it, and instead of being like warmed up into it by maybe hearing it a few times in a club, and then maybe a headline coming through playing it and being in the moment in your favorite place and sort of going, oh, okay, yeah, oh, it's not my favorite new techno, but yeah, in it comes, that's techno as well. We went, shut, the fucking door is shut, house and techno ends here. If it's not already in, it's not house or techno. We can recycle this for fucking ever. That's brilliant. We can do this for fucking ever. But we now know what house and techno are and what isn't house and techno. And so from here onwards, we'll know that those aren't our nights and these are our nights. And what house and techno are is like, I don't know, this involves you and the listeners knowing 3 films. Hopefully for this anecdote, you've seen the original Blade Runner 2049, and the Spike Jonze film Her, which is about the guy who falls in love with his AI. Now, Blade Runner is an early 1980s image of the future from the 80s. So the false people are mechanical, they're biomechanical, but they are an 80s idea of what the future will encompass. It didn't have any of the kind of possibilities that we now know it did. So Blade Runner encompasses those anxieties about the future in the 80s. And so when you get to Blade Runner 2049, it's projecting into a future that never happened. So we're in an alternate timeline. It has to honor Blade Runner. On the assumptions of Blade Runner, it can't bring in much of what we know to be true. Some of it does, it brings in the virtual companion, the absolute loneliness and the separation. It does that brilliantly, but it has to stay true to the 80s idea of where we're heading. I think Her is the Blade Runner of our time. It's the one that looked around at where we are today. And it was 10 years ago, and I watched it again last week, and I was like, fucking, he literally set it in 2025. And here we are with AI stuff, on our computers, facing this issue. And so I think, to bring this fucking long metaphor to an end, I think that house and techno are Blade Runner. And whenever we stay in that lane, all we can do is we can make Blade Runner 2049. We can honor a 1980s view of the future, which was absolutely pure and like completely honest. As you say, you hear a guy called Gerald, it tapped into this new machine, the moment of the 80s, the possibilities it might offer. And now we're kind of, and I know this doesn't make me popular, I've said it online once and it kind of got mixed reactions. We're kind of cosplaying that we're still in the music of the future. And we're not. We're in this 1980s idea, and that's fine. We can do that. Oasis are dutifully continuing the light of what the 60s was going to lead to. And so this is how music works. But I think it's a shame, because I think we've robbed ourselves of addressing some of the fundamental issues. Like you say, like, kids are not us. And if we say the only way you can enjoy house music, you people who have a thing in your pocket which literally magnetizes distraction and flicks you with a new experience every 30 seconds. The only way to enjoy house music, however, is to stay still for 3 hours, listen to one tune for 8 minutes, not go for a fag break because we couldn't. I know you can, but you mustn't because it ruins the flow. Not go to the bar because we had drugs, and I know it's drinking culture now. But what you do, stand in the corner with your friends, don't fucking move for 3 hours, wait every 8 minutes, it will change slightly, and it'll change slightly, and every 90 minutes you'll get a big fucking payoff. And they're like, what the fuck is that for? Because everything else in my life is like, pyum, 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 pyum. And there are people who've addressed this. I'm going to literally have to pull up, because my fucking pronunciation is terrible. Yosuke Yukimatsu, the Japanese guy, his boiler room was reshared recently. So, there's so many people have bumped into recently. I think he is the nearest thing to somebody saying, I want to keep playing house and techno to people, but these people are not going to fucking do this. We cannot keep telling them to behave in this one way to receive this music. So he is bringing music from here, from here, from here, from here, from here, from here. Now, he's still doing maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes of a track. He's not like doing like tick, 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 but he's feeding that thirst for like sort of variety and novelty by mixing such diverse things together and landing them on a fucking sixpence. And those are not people with phones out. That boiler room set is fucking phenomenal for the crowd reaction.
Yeah, I watched it last week, and especially like, did he have brain cancer?
Yeah,
which is even more like, mind. It's a mind fuck, but it was nice because it was pure. What I saw, it was just absolutely pure, and again, that's why we love dance music. Because it was pure, and because like it felt, when I watched that, and usually I'll watch something, and if it just doesn't grab me, it'll be off within a couple of minutes. I watched that all the way through.
Yeah, Yeah, I sent it to a friend who's like, the most distractible man on the planet. And I was like, I'm sending you a link. In about 8 minutes from now, I expect to get a video back from you with your fucking pants on your head, screaming in front of your fucking computer because this is fucking ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be done, is my point. And so this is why I'm not just whinging. I'm not just going, oh, you shouldn't be doing it. You shouldn't go out and see these bands anymore. You shouldn't see those DJs. Fuck that. Do whatever makes you happy. If people want to experience that experience, there's nothing else like it. Go and fucking have that experience. It still is fundamentally that thing, and nothing else really delivers the same, emotional kind of sustained thing. I think there is a possibility for house and techno to sort of get out of their own way a bit, and it kind of requires that the fixtures of the scene kind of fuck off. And I don't mean by anybody personal. I'm not sitting there going, I'm talking to you. I just think, and obviously I'd say this because I fucked off, and so what people always go, you should do what I do. I don't necessarily think that, but I just think if it will make any kind of meaningful contribution to the present day again, dance music has a problem. It's not a problem. It's the beauty of it. It grows old, but it doesn't grow up, because electronic music can grow up. Like, you can deliver like beautiful, ugly, reflective, complex electronic music, but to make it work in the confines of a DJ set is kind of a fucking trick. So dance music is kind of ageless and timeless, and that's the reason it has this massive appeal. Step back into it, and it does this one sphere of experience and emotion, and a lot can happen in that sphere. I'm not saying it's one note, but it's got this arena it exists in. You're not really meant to make people reflect on death in a dance fucking club, but you can in electronic music. So that's why I'm differentiating the two. Not to say it's simple, it's not. Within that area, I've had experiences that literally are using sound to evoke emotions that, and clear things that I think, if there's one thing I do miss from dance music, not as in I sit around and go, but which my body misses, is crafting a track until I've got something so fucking perfect that playing it is just like a flooding sensation. And I think you're not just like having a little jolly. I think you're literally clearing emotion and stuff through yourself. You're dealing with whatever it is you have going on in sort of going to these places with dance music. And it's fucking unparalleled, And I think it's a shame that we're insisting that there's only one way to consume it, because I would love it to find its place in this world, not the Blade Runner 2049 world, where we've got to do it the right way. And some of that just requires letting new blood in, are prepared to take on games culture, distraction culture. The Japanese guy is bringing in, literally there are game soundtracks in his set, and accepting that is the fucking world, and saying, no, it has to be Sven Väth, to use your example. Well, it can be Sven Väth. He's fucking amazing. He's been going forever because he's good. But it's just like, we live in the same world where there is a kebab shop 3 miles from here where they sing really quite appalling, really awful toneless covers of songs and adapt them to be about kebabs. And every one of those songs has about 1 million hits. And we're here like fretting over whether we've got, 1,000 views on SoundCloud. Our kids don't live in the world we lived in. It's just not that world. And so we've got to compete with kebab shops and TikTok and all this stuff. And if you don't, then we're just counting down to like, the last guy out, shut the door, please, is my take. But I could go to the club tomorrow and go, full of shit. It's fucking amazing. What am I talking about?
Well, again, Matt, that's why I love your honesty. I think we need to talk about it because, in order for dance music to move along, conversations need to happen like this, on a bigger spectrum. So, yeah, really, really glad you came on and we went way past an hour, which is fine with me.
Oh, shit, sorry.
No. I'm one for, if the conversation's flowing. just keep it going. But, you know, I really appreciate you taking the time, and you know, it feels like an honor that you said yes to coming on the podcast.
Oh, not quite. It's nice to be asked. I've never sort of said no to stuff going, no, fuck off. I've always just thought, no, just not what I'm doing. But it's to be asked, because I think it's the Liverpool thing. I guess, like, you know, somebody rings up and goes, do you want to do this? And it's just like, I don't know. But, you know, I lived in the city for a few years. You know, I was working out a bit for a few years after that. You know, I went back to university there recently to do like a sort of music masters, and, you know, I've grown up just down the road. So I guess it was just, you know, like the first gig was Cream, something stupid, you know, because Matthew laid this groundwork, and then I walked into Cream's people on. So, you know, there is this connection. So I just thought, I don't even think, I just sort of felt like, yeah, I probably could talk about in this context. So I appreciate you asking. It's nice to get it said rather than just, you know, circling as usual. That's all our thoughts too.
Well, I thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening. As always, please like, subscribe, put your notifications on. And as I always say now, you know, put your earbuds on, listen for new artists, listen for new music. It's all out there, you know. Go to Bandcamp, search, you know.
Don't be a band you wouldn't see or a DJ you wouldn't see. If I was going to throw one idea on this closing idea, I went to see a band with this mate of mine, very distracted one, called Jersey. Like, it's all 150 BPM, every track 2.5 minutes. It's not really my thing. You know, I checked, I was like, it's not really my thing. But he was really excited. And I was like, fuck it, how about going out to something we're probably not remotely fucking expecting what's going to happen? And the person with me has been absolutely having kittens. And it was just a fucking really interesting laugh. It wasn't like I went there and had an epiphany, but I really enjoyed it. I saw something I was never going to see if I'd gone, what do I like? I'll go and see that. So that's the thought. Go and see Bandy. Don't think you're going to.
Yeah, spend a bit of money, and you know, you might walk in and they might be your favorite band for the rest of your life, you know. So it's always good, and for me, Bandcamp is a brilliant place to go, because most of the money will go to the actual artist, which is the main thing, because that's their art, they've created it. So yeah, please go. And you know, if you want to go down memory lane, you can find King Unique still on Beatport, Bandcamp, everywhere that good music
No,
is.
not on Bandcamp. I'm so fucking useless at being corporate. I never even said one. You can go back Beatport, where due to all the complexities of stuff, I won't see a penny of it. So yeah, just listen to it wherever. I don't make. I think I get like weird royalties for like people on TV in Brazil occasionally and stuff like that. So don't watch me on TV in Brazil. That will make me money.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Matt. Everybody stay safe, take care of one another, because, you know, the world is a pretty, you know, awful place at times. So, you know, each individual try and make it a little bit better. Until next time, we'll see you later.
Nice one. Appreciate it.